and welcome. Dr. Andy Rosenvarb here. Today we're going to talk more about oxidative stress and free radical activity. Today's topic of conversation is what causes oxidative stress and what are the 7 main driving factors that contribute. There are 7 of them, so I want to go over them. So first, let's review. Let's talk a little bit about oxidative stress. And we know that it's caused, as we discussed in previous sessions, by imbalance between the production of reactive oxygen species and the body's ability to detoxify or repair the resulting damage. So basically, we have too much of these reactive oxygen species and the body can't really recover from it. The body's breaking down faster than it can build up. So reactive oxygen species, ROS, are highly reactive molecules, as a reminder, that contain oxygen atoms and can be generated as natural byproducts of normal cellular metabolism, right? So during mitochondrial activity, when the body's producing ATP, the normal byproduct of cellular metabolism, which uses oxygen, of course, in glucose sugar, is reactive oxygen species. So again, this is not something that we want to do away with totally, right? Reactive oxygen species is very important, and we're going to talk more about why, but we don't want to eliminate it. It gets out of control, okay? So that's really what we're talking about here. While the ROS play an important role in various biological processes, excessive ROS production can overwhelm the body and their antioxidants defensive system, which leads to oxidative stress. So again, just think of it as like your defense system just can't keep up with the attack. It's almost like when viruses, you catch a cold, your immune system, your white blood cells just can't handle it for whatever reason, and your body becomes overwhelmed by a virus or a bacteria, and then you get sick, right? So it's the same way. You're not going to experience symptoms as long as your body is keeping the oxidative stress, reactive oxygen species in check. But what happens when the body's antioxidant capacity, its ability to manage the free radicals or they just become too proliferative and there's too much reactive oxygen species, that's when we have problems. So let's get back to our conversation of what are the 7 main causes of oxidative stress. Here we go. The first is environmental factors, okay? And these are really important, so pay attention here. Environmental factors where exposure from environmental pollution such as air pollution, cigarette smoke, pesticides, radiation, UV radiation, blue light, chemical radiation. We talked yesterday about chemotherapy. Radiation from chemotherapy can certainly be a factor. All these lead to a generation of increased reactive oxygen species, which contribute to elevations in oxidative stress. So environmental factors are a real big one. A lot of the air, the water, the food we eat. There's chemicals in our food. There's antibiotics. There's steroids. There a lot of the grains have mutated. There are a lot of GMOs. There are herbicides and pesticides, and it's a whole other conversation. But all this junk in the environment that pollutes our body is pretty toxic in the air and the water in our food. So can't get rid of that, but we can use things like hydrogen therapy and antioxidants to really help our body manage the oxidative stress from the environmental factors. Second factor is diet and lifestyle, okay? We just started to talk about that a little bit. So consumption of a poor diet high in processed foods, junk food, unhealthy fats, low in antioxidants such as fruits and vegetables, which contain most of the the vital natural sources of antioxidants, specifically carotenoid antioxidants found in leafy green vegetables, certainly fruits and vegetables that contain a lot of vitamin C, like citrus fruits and strawberries. Berries as well are a very, very great source of antioxidants. So people who don't eat a lot of fruits and vegetables are usually replete in their antioxidants. So not eating enough fruits and vegetables is definitely a road to low oxidative or low antioxidant activity. So additionally, habits like drinking too much alcohol, smoking cigarettes, smoking cigars, smoking cannabis, recreational drug use, a lot of diet soda, a lot of coffee, a lot of stimulants, right? Monster drinks and Red Bulls and stuff like that. Yeah, like once in a while, I guess if you kind of need them or like to use them. But the idea is knowing that anything that's a stimulant, alcohol, nicotine, caffeine, is going to create more free radicals in your body and more reactive oxygen species. So again, anything that's a processed food or refined food, a junk food, a stimulant, any of these drugs, soda, fast food, stuff like that, fried, greasy foods with rancid fats are certainly going to create some problems for us in terms of creating more reactive oxygen species. So that's diet and lifestyle for sure. Also, lack of exercise, right? Too little exercise in a sedentary lifestyle. Also, too much exercise. Okay, sedentary exercise will cause accumulation of fats and fluids and blood sugar to increase in the body because we're not moving our body, not moving our lymphatic system. Also, people who exercise too much, triathletes, especially as we get older, the body is breaking down, but when we're younger, we can rebuild pretty fast. Our digestive system's working well. But if you're training too hard, your muscle is breaking down faster than it can build up. So as we discussed yesterday, this is why athletes do really, really well with hydrogen therapy, using the hydrogen tabs. Really, really effective for that. So again, just because we think exercise is healthy and people who are like super athletes, they're not. And we know that because people will, be exercising and running and they still get cancer and they can, have a heart attack. And why? Like we look at that, like people look so healthy. Like they're in shape, they're in great shape, they run, they're a triathlete, they're marathons, they're seemingly very fit individuals. But the problem is they have inflammation and oxidative stress that you can't see. So while they look cut and ripped and really well defined and have high endurance and high strength, they're just not. So we need to. What's missing and is not inside these conversations of athletic performance and athletic recovery is again managing oxidative stress and managing inflammation related to reactive oxygen species. So let's move on to the third factor. The third major factor we've gone over a lot of times, and yes, I'm going to say it again, inflammation. Okay, chronic inflammation in the body can trigger the release of reactive oxygen species and free radicals as part of the immune response. Prolonged excessive inflammation can lead to sustained oxidative stress. This is why things like autoimmune conditions that are almost always inflamed. And again, a lot of people don't know these autoimmune conditions. We know things like Crohn's, colitis, irritable bowel, multiple sclerosis, arthritis, any of the itises. But even when we're looking at eye conditions, right? Scleritis, uveitis, iritis, retinitis pigmentosa, glaucoma, macular degeneration, even eye strokes. A lot of these come about because of inflammation, chronic inflammation. And the chronic inflammation with a lot of these eye diseases or any inflammatory process, whether it's autoimmune or viral or metabolic issues, what happens when we have this prolonged inflammation, it creates free radical damage. And we see that for those of you guys who have eye conditions, or people have eye issues, what's one thing that happens when people who have early stage eye conditions like RP or juvenile macular degeneration or Usher syndrome or idiopathic optic nerve issues and like your kids or teens or 20s, what happens is we get cataracts. Cataract formation is very, very common in people who have eye conditions. And early on, like 20, 30 years old, like why do I have cataracts? The reason is because the inflammation facilitates more reactive oxygen species, and cataracts is a direct result of oxidative stress. So we know for sure that if somebody has cataracts at an early age, there is without question oxidative stress going on. We already know that, but that's a really good indicator. And how do we know, again, with ophthalmic conditions, is there inflammation? Yep, light sensitivity. So other health conditions, for sure, we need to look for more specifics. But anytime there's photosensitivity or light sensitivity or photophobia, we know that there's an inflammation of the brain and or nervous system of the eye and optic nerve. So let's move on to number 4, okay? Number 3 is inflammation. Number 4 is mitochondrial dysfunction. And we've been talking a lot about that as well. So the mitochondria are a structure inside the cells, and they are energy producing, and they are a major source of reactive oxygen species by virtue of what they do in their job in terms of, we talked about a couple of minutes ago about producing energy. So the dysfunction of the mitochondria is often associated with aging or certain diseases, which can lead to increased reactive oxygen species and oxidative stress and free radical damage. So again, when the mitochondrial dysfunction is either overproducing or underproducing energy, which is ATP. Again, in Chinese medicine, we call this qi, or Japanese medicine is ki, and also in Korean medicine. In Ayurvedic medicine, it's called prana, right? So it's this life force energy that's unique to living organisms, that plants and animals have it, inanimate objects like coffee cups and teacups do not have them. So mitochondrial dysfunction, hyperactivity and a hypoactivity. And we're going to talk more about hypoactivity in the next couple weeks when we continue our deep dive into this subject here. So let's look at the next one, number 5. The 5th main factor that drives oxidative stress is metabolic disorders, okay? Another thing we talked about, and again, you guys may start seeing a pattern here. A lot of the conversations we're having around oxidative stress there is some redundancy here, and that's design, that's by design, so that you guys can start connecting the dots, and you're going to see by repetition, we're talking about the same types of things that drive oxidative stress. So for 5, when we talk about metabolic disorders, we're talking about conditions like diabetes, okay, like obesity, metabolic syndrome, low thyroid function, and these could all disrupt normal cellular metabolism and lead to production of excessive reactive oxygen species, causing oxidative stress, okay? So metabolic disorders, again, thyroid, obesity, diabetes, all major factors. We need to look at these. And again, with these cases, again, don't think that we're just going to take antioxidants and get rid of this stuff. We still need to deal with the underlying root cause. There's just an effect of these factors that are causing this hyperactivity of reactive oxygen species and free radicals, but we still need to deal with the source. So while we're putting out the fires, so to speak, of these free radicals inundating the body, that's one thing, right? But we still need to get back to the underlying root cause of what's driving this, okay? Which is what we're talking about here. So that's the 5th. The 5th factor is metabolic disorders. The 6th factor is stress. Emotional, mental, physical, chemical, environmental, different types of stress on the body. So let's talk about psychological stress. So psychological stress, we have a very deep dive conversation on this on our YouTube page, so I'm not going to spend too much time. But we basically have mental stress, which is problem solving, right? It's more cerebral, left brain activity, it's puzzles, putting puzzles together and trying to troubleshoot and figure things out, right? Very left brain, cerebral, psychological stress. So then the other side is emotional stress. Okay, that's another form of psychological stress where we are resistant to people, places, or things. Things are creating emotions that are stirring and ruminating inside of us, like anger, irritability, depression, anxiety, sadness, grief, overwhelm. Again, any of these again, anxiety, I'd mentioned that, but any of these emotional feelings that we're dealing with that become obsessive and or they ruminate, meaning they come over and over and we just can't shake them. So we have both of these types of psychological things going on where we're either thinking too much, where we're kind of worrying in our heads too much, and the other one is we're dealing with pain or anxiety or worry or some type of emotions that have kind of got us gripped. So the stress can lead to an activation of the body's stress response, right? The pituitary and adrenal axis kind of kicks off, and we have an increased production of stress hormones. And this production of stress hormones like adrenaline and cortisol and catecholamines, that reaction, that chemical reaction, and that creation of these fight or flight hormones and chemicals inside the body part of that generation of those hormones, or that dumping of those hormones, will cause a release of more reactive oxygen species and free radicals, because it's an inflammatory process. We're in fight or flight, right? We either got to get out or we're in fight mode. That is the stress response. So part of the stress response, the sympathetic nervous system response, is the activation of production of reactive oxygen species, free radicals, which in turn will accelerate oxidative stress. Of course, on the flip side of that, when we can activate the parasympathetic nervous system and the rest and digest and to get the body to start relaxing, that's when we see the reactive oxygen species start to decrease their activity, and we start to see the antioxidants taking over and more of the brakes, right? So the sympathetic nervous system is the gas, and the parasympathetic nervous system is the braking mechanism. So when we're redlining it and we're pushing the gas too much, there's too much. We're going to overheat our engine, so to speak. So we need to pump the brakes, get the parasympathetic, get our rest and relaxation, and that's going to be really, really helpful for our recovery. So let's talk about the last factor. So the last factor that I want to talk about today that really drives oxidative stress and excessive reactive oxygen species is certain medications and toxins. Okay, we talked about pollution a little bit earlier, but most pharmaceutical medications and recreational drugs, now we know cannabis is legal, but even things, of course, like cocaine and opiates. A lot of people take opiates for a lot of pain, a lot of reason. A lot of people, unfortunately, are addicted to them. So pharmaceutical medications, recreational drugs, again, we talk about caffeine, stimulants, we talked about nicotine, things like that. These are all toxic substances, such as certain also antibiotics. Chemotherapy is, of course, we discussed a couple days ago that chemotherapy and radiation are among the most oxidizing treatments on the planet. And the reason they are that way is because oxidative therapies will kill cancer cells, and that's intentional. But the problem is that chemotherapy and radiation therapy, they do damage to kill the cancer cells, but there's still negative effects in terms of excessive free radical activity going on in the body that go unmanaged and need to be managed. So also heavy metals, right? Aluminum, mercury, lead, these are all in our environment, in the water, in the air, often in our food, that we can't get rid of, that do produce a lot of free radical damage, free radical hyperactivity, and subsequent damage from oxidative stress. So in general, it really impairs the body's antioxidants defense, contributing to these excessive levels and accelerated aging that we know comes along with the oxidative stress. So it's important to note that while the oxidative stress is a normal part of cellular metabolism, excessive or chronic oxidative stress can damage our cellular components, including the DNA, the proteins, the lipids, leading to various diseases and accelerated aging process. Pay attention, I said DNA, right? And I've said this a couple times before. That means oxidative stress can get all the way down to the DNA, create genetic mutations in DNA, which will ultimately cause unique or new gene expressions, which are diseases, all right? So, for example, a lot of RP patients or Usher's patients, or with these more genetic diseases, are first generation. Like, nobody in my family has it. How can it be genetic if nobody else has it? Yes, it affected your genes. You are the first genetic person to have that in your family, because it's probable that there was some form of oxidative stress or a combination of factors that created this oxidative stress that eventually got down to your DNA and caused these genetic mutations and new gene expression. Okay, so there are these mutations that happen. You guys watch, movies like Deadpool or X-Men or something like that. They take this to an extreme, and it's really a lot of fun. They talk about, genetic mutations creating superpowers, but on this end, it can actually cause a decline in health and create new things that, can be passed on from family to family. That's why dealing with oxidative stress is so important. I'm spending so much time with you guys on this. So maintaining a healthy lifestyle, including a balanced, healthy, whole food diet, getting regular exercise, minimizing exposure to environmental toxins, keeping our detox pathways open can all help reduce oxidative stress and its negative effects. So when we use therapies, in addition to trying to avoid, minimize the factors that we just talked about, using our supplements like our H2 Vision tabs daily, twice a day, to help mitigate the free radicals that are looming and in some cases running rampant in our body, we have to control those levels so that we can age better, we can live longer and better, right? It's not just about quantity of life, it's quality too, right? So improving your taking hydrogen tabs can improve your overall health by reducing the free radical activity and reduce the symptoms that you're having. And again, it also helps with some of these age-related conditions. We talked last week about cardiovascular disease, stroke and heart attack, cancer, and neurodegenerative diseases being the number 3 causes of death, barring accidents. So those are all seriously amped up and accelerated by oxidative stress. So we start managing the oxidative stress today, right? We start managing this stress factor soon so that we prevent these diseases from coming in the future. And if you're early stage with any of these conditions, we start treatment now. We don't wait till they get bad enough to where it's a problem, right? Little problem, little mess, easy to clean up, easy to manage. Don't wait till it gets out of control, because sometimes when the nerves die and we reach a point of degeneration, all we can do is try to slow the process down. So those of you guys who, we've had a tremendous amount of orders come in over the last couple of days for our H2 tabs. You can go to our website, ihealthinstitute.com. We have our H2 tabs where you drop in water. You basically take 2 of these little blue purplish pills. You drop in water in a cup, wait for them to dissolve. You can use any liquid except carbonated beverages. You can use juice. Please don't use alcohol. They don't specify that, but we really want to use water or juice. You can. I'm not big on fruit juice because it really messes with your blood sugar. But if you don't like the taste, what I recommend people is do, even maybe like 4 ounces of juice and 4 ounces of water. If you use cranberry juice or grape juice or orange juice or cherry juice, those juices that are more tart are going to just kill the taste. Some people just, for whatever reason, they're taste sensitive. It tastes like it has a little bit of a magnesium taste. Oh, the other thing I wanted to mention, and a couple of people asking, the H2 tabs are, one of the base is magnesium, but it's not a lot of magnesium. So any of you guys who are sensitive to magnesium won't have issues. I'm kind of sensitive to magnesium and I don't have any issues. It's a very, very small binder amount of magnesium that just keeps the chemicals together. So then when we put the tabs in water, it's a chemical reaction that releases the hydrogen gas. So I want to stop there for today. Going forward, we have a few more segments in this module on oxidative stress, hydrogen therapy, reactive oxygen species, and we're also going to start talking about the opposite in a couple weeks. In 2 weeks from now, we're going to do 1 or 2 more sessions. Then I'm going to start getting into reduction, the opposite side of oxidative stress, the difference between the two. We're also going to be talking about the difference between oxygen therapy, like hyperbaric, and exercise with oxygen therapy, and also things like ozone therapy, and how they differ in contrast to hydrogen therapy. So stay tuned for that next week. Have a great rest of your day, guys. Dr. Andy Rosenfarb here with AccuVision, and your vision, definitely our mission. Take care.